Hi, welcome. It's Pauline again, and it's episode 18 on our ExQISSite Quilt. We are getting so close to getting this quilt finished. This episode, we're going to talk about how I've joined my units together, and I'll show you some of the sashings that I've put in my quilt. And let me tell you, I didn't use all of the ones that I made. Some of them just didn't fit, some, as in colour-wise. They just didn't look right in the quilt. You know, what you imagine before you start to what you end up with can be so different. So don't be afraid to change yours around. If you find that you put something down and the colour's too strong, it's too busy, it's not balancing, you've got too much lights, too much darks in areas, don't use it. Remake something else. It's worth taking the time at this stage than getting the quilt together and you not be 100% happy with it. So let's show you what I've done here. This is the top section, if we can have a good look at this. And there is a full photo of the quilt at the end of this video that you'll be able to look at mine on the design wall to be able to see where I've positioned everything very, very clearly. When I did the star sashing and I put this one on, I decided it was too plain, so I went back and I used the dot-to-dot templates and I drew this little figure 8, and I've stitched that in all of the sashings, and I just felt it helped it pull it together. I was trying to decide, and I'm still in two minds whether I'm going to come back and echo around that to fill it in a little bit more. That's a decision I'll make very, very soon. So we've got the 9 patch on here, we've got a triple up here, we've got the boxed in squares here, and just the little applique on this one here. And the back of the quilt, your back of your quilt should look just really nice and neat and tidy, like I'm trying to keep mine. But that's the top section, that's unit A and B put together. Now we're going to show you unit, which one is it? Here we go. Here we've got unit, sorry, that's A and C I've put together. I made a mistake there, A and C. This one is unit B and D going together. So we've used the, like a Celtic design here. You can see I've got my vine running through, it's all stitched down. I've done the crazy patchwork. My goodness me, the threads, they're everywhere, aren't they? The crazy patchwork here. Then we have our lattice sashing, which I love doing that one. And then just a little checkerboard down here. So that one's together, and then the final unit is this one, where we have, oops, we have these small ones here. Then we've got the large flying geese. And with the flying geese, these ones, I've just done an echo. I've ditch-stitched them. I come through and ditch-stitch them, and then I've done a 1/4 inch out just around that seam allowance to make that sit nicely. We've got the 4 patch there. When I did the sashing with the little peeper strip or the flange, it needed something quilted into it. I nearly did go and put some applique on here, but I didn't want to do that because I felt I had enough applique. So I've just quilted the little design. The design I've used, I got from the tulip template, the F template that we used in our quilting designs, and I've just used this top section. So I might just flip this over so you can see what I'm talking about here. I've used this top section, traced that on, and then just quilted that to fill in there. Now these are the last 2 blocks that we never had quilted. We talked about those in the last episode where we did the clamshells. I did the clamshells and chose to do the small melons, and then I've got the some triple up sashing there as well. And you notice I haven't used the small flying geese. There's some of the sashings that I haven't used, but I've kept them for the border sashing because we've now got to go on and make some border sashings. But before we do that, I just want to talk to you a little bit about joining these 3 units together. Now, it's terribly important, as you probably know yourself, that you may have got a little bit of stretching as you started to join this together. So what we need to do is, once we get the units together, and I'll just demonstrate with this one, get your tape measure and measure 3 measurements. We need to get 3 measurements. We're going to measure down the side, both sides, close to the edge. Don't go right to the edge, but close to the edge. I have 36-inch measurement. You may be different, it doesn't matter, so long as your measurements all measure the same. 36, 36, and 36. So mine's come out nice and even for me. But if it hadn't have, would recommend, if you need to do this, I like to use the big 15-inch square or 15.5-inch square, because I like to make sure my corners are exactly even. Okay, you want to make sure they're even. So if this was a little bit out, if I had to trim a bit out, using this big square ruler will help you get those corners all even to each other. Just run your rotary cutter around, check this side, it's all even, do the same the other end. And also you need to measure across here, because you want to keep it the same width. So do 3 measurements here. I've got 18.25, 18.25, 18.25. Now yours may measure differently again, so don't panic. It depends on how much quilting you've done and how accurate you are joining your sashings in. And we can't be perfect. I'm nowhere near perfect. I've just looked at this stitching line, it's crooked. But I'll unpick that because I'm not happy with that. I'm going to unpick that line before I join it together and fix that line, which I've done with some of the things as I've moved through, because you know how you rush things, you want to get it done. It's all right to go back and unpick. So once we get these 2 units the same length, we're now going to join them together with one of our spacer strips. So I've got my spacer strip already joined onto this section here. It's very easy. As we were joining our blocks together, it's the same thing. Cut your spacer strip, but make sure whatever the length is of your panels that are being joined together, make sure your spacer strip is exactly that length. You do not want it longer, because if it's longer and you just sew it on, things won't line up for you. Take it from me, it's worth the extra effort to have that exactly the same length as your panels. Now, if you don't have a piece of fabric that's long enough, there's no harm in putting joins into your backing fabric. You may be a little bit short on some of the strips you've cut because your blocks have turned out a bit longer than what you thought. Don't worry about putting joins in. Just do a straight join, press the seam opened, and then cut it to the length that you need it to be. Once you get that done, it's just simply making sure you pin the ends so they're exactly level. I like to pin so my quilt top is on the top. Let me just pick this up. I like to have the quilt top on the top, and we're going to pin. I personally like to use the flower head pins, the really nice sharp ones. Pin the end and pin the opposite end. Do that first. Pin that, then come back and make sure it's fitting right and pin the middle. And you might like to, before you start pinning the ends, you might have liked to have found the middle of your spacer strip and of your panel, but I'm just going to guess it here. I think I'm pretty right there. And we'll pin. Now, pinning it will help everything just stay exactly as it should be. So do all of that. Too many pins, you can never overpin when we're doing something like this, because it's much better to take the time to pin it than what it is for it to walk along as you're starting to sew this, and then you have to unpick it and readjust. So when we've done that, we'll use our normal thread in the top end of the bobbin, and we'll sew this seam with a 1/4 inch seam, and then we'll have that spacer strip joining those pieces together. Then we're going to put a sashing over it, but I've decided to make a different sashing for this one to any of the others that we've made. So I'm going to explain that to you, and all your measurements and that will be in your notes that you download, so don't forget to download those notes. Go to our website to download those notes. And I hope you're keeping your notes in a folder for future reference, and maybe you're making other little bits and pieces to the notes as you go through, you know, about what settings you've used on your sewing machine, what you've done to change things up a bit. Now this is bulging a little bit at this end, so I'm going to distribute this out further, because I think this little section here may have stretched a little bit. So I'm going to divide a little bit of that fullness between each one of those pins, and then when I sew it, it will fit in there beautifully. So divide up a lot of fullness in between the pins and you won't have any problem as you sew that down. So that's what we'll do to join those two units together. Oh, it's starting to get big and exciting, but you know, hopefully you're grateful that all of the quilting is done. We've just got those borders to quilt separately. So once we've sewed that on, we'll have a 2-inch spacer there, and we're going to put our sashing over the top. Once we've done that, we're going to join another spacer strip across the top here to join this top unit on. Now, once again, when you join this top unit on, you need these to be the same measurement. So once you've got that sewn on, mine are not measuring the same measurement because this is not yet seamed on. But I think I've double checked all my measurements before and it comes out perfectly. But once you've got this joined on and you put your sashing over the top, measure this and make sure this top panel measures the same. And you should have enough that you can trim off the sides there, the way we've quilted it. I'm very cautious of where I trimmed because here my feathers are getting quite close to the side. So I wouldn't trim off this side. If I come over to this side, I've got a lot more room here that I can make an adjustment on. So make sure you get those measurements right so that you can get this all sitting perfectly flat for you. Once that's together, it is then, in this episode, I'm going to explain to you about making your sashings to join your border on. And then the next episode will all be about your borders and the quilting designs and everything that that I can suggest to you that you might like to use joining your quilt together. Okay, so don't forget to download your notes to give you all your measurements, all the instructions you need. Download the little chart because this is showing you where the sections are going together. What we've been talking about in this episode is joining these units together. Okay, so they then complete the whole centre of the quilt. Then when we do that, once we get these borders done, we'll be joining a spacer strip and we'll be putting the side borders on before we put the top and bottom border on. Now just a little hint, if you are going to go ahead and cut your borders out, and they can be whatever width you want, be aware that you're going to be making these two side borders first. You'll be adding them to the quilt with the spacer strips and putting the sashings over them. and then you'll be cutting the borders for the top and bottom, because they have to include your 2 side borders and your 2 side spacer strips. So don't get too far ahead cutting all those borders out. I'd hate you to cut the top and bottom ones too short. So that's all covered in the next lesson. But the sashing that I'm making to join those 2 long panels together, they're going to be triangles, and we're going to use the 2-inch triangle template from the set that we've used before. We're going to cut around them and make up units exactly as we had. You know, we've got our template here. Oops, get it the right way around. So we're going to be joining them together into units. But you'll need pairs. You'll need 2 pairs, like so, the same. We have joined them together like just normal triangles before, just to give us our normal triangles. But this time we're going to flip them. So they're going to have a run of colour through here. So you'll join all of these together to make, they look like little bow ties at the moment. Once we've got enough, the instructions in your notes will tell you how many of each colour to cut. And do a variety of different colours, or you could do them all the same colour, depending whether you like this sashing or not on your quilt. Once you've got that sewn together, you'll then put them through the sasher tool and make up your full strip. Okay, so you've got the run of white, the run of colour, the run of white, the run of colour. Or play with them. Come up with a different combination of triangles. You can make so many different shapes out of. Once you've put that through, put your batting inside, and then you're simply going to come back. Once we've got this strip joined on, we're then just going to glue this in place and stitch it on. And it's just adding a different variety of triangles to the quilt to what we've done in other sections. I just played with those shapes to come up with that combination. So that's getting that panel together. Now, to get ready for the next part, for the sashings for the outside, to join the quilt on, I'll just leave this here so we can see the colours. I haven't used the small flying geese, but I'm going to hopefully put them in my border. So I've kept them aside. I've made another set of the squares, and where I'm going to put this in my quilt, the instructions you'll get in your instructions here, it'll tell you the sizes that I'm using for I'm positioning them in the quilt. So if you want more of this appearing in your quilt, just add extra numbers to that. But these, you've already got the instructions for this one. I've made 2 more sets of the normal triangles. One will go down the side and one will go, I think, across the bottom, because I'm trying to balance and distribute it out. But as I said, there will be a photo of all of this for you, not all joined together, but up on the design wall at the end of this video, so you can have a look where I'm positioning all of these. I've made 2 sets of the side-by-side triangles, just using the one colour plus the background fabric. I've made 2 sets of those, one for the top and one for, I think it's going on the right-hand side of the quilt. Then out of my scraps of fabric, I've made some white sashings 2 inches wide, just random blanks, because I find putting the decorative sashings all the way around the quilt, particularly on mine, it was too much. So I'm going to space them out with some of the plain background fabric, which I may or may not quilt. I'm not sure on that yet. I've just got to wait and see how it all comes together. But have a look at the photo at the end. You'll see where I've positioned all my sashings. Some of the sashings we made in previous videos, episodes, we may have had them too long or too short. If they're too long, you can trim them back just simply by unpicking back to where you need to, or you could add more. So all of the sashings you can add or subtract from. A couple of the applique ones are a little bit more tricky to do, but any of these piece ones you can add or subtract. So it's all here in your notes. We tell you how many of each piece to cut if you make them exactly the same as mine. But we are absolutely delighted that we're getting so many photos sent in to us of people that are joining this ExQISSite Quilt, whether they've started with us at the beginning at episode 1 or whether they've picked up on it 3 or 4 months later just by watching it on YouTube. We're loving the photos that you're sending in, so please keep them coming, because we want to have a beautiful display on our YouTube channel of all of these quilts when they're finished. Because I think you should be very proud of yourself that you've been able to quilt yourself. You've been able to make a lot of very different sashings with our Quilt As You Go technique. And I know you're going to have a beautiful quilt when it's finished. So keep up the good work. And join us for the next episode where we're going to be talking about the width of our borders, the designs we've quilted, and how we join the borders to the quilt. And then in the final episode, we'll have a little bit of a look back over some things that we've done throughout the process, and we'll do a binding with a little peeper strip or a flange to set off the edge of your quilt. So stay tuned until we see you in the next episode. Happy quilting for now. We quiz you all. Bye.